So then I said, "That ain't apple juice, silly baka." Thank you. You guys have been too kind. Well, that's all for me for tonight. So let me welcome our next guest to the stage, Mr. Bakugo. One Piece. Okay. Well, One Piece is the best shonen. Yeah, and Thriller Bark is the best arc. Now, Thriller Bark is the 5th saga in One Piece, as well as being the shortest saga in One Piece. Thriller Bark starts right after Enies Lobby and post-Enies Lobby, where CP9 are defeated by the Straw Hats in an epic showdown between the two groups, where each member of CP9 slowly gets beaten by the Straw Hats, only to be finished by a legendary fight scene between Luffy and Rob Lucci. After Rob Lucci is defeated, the Straw Hats all regroup and rejoice with one another and commence in their victory. The Straw Hats are each given a new bounty for their efforts in Enies Lobby, and Frankie builds a new ship for the crew named the Sunny. Now, with the Sunny, a complete upgrade from the Mary being built, the Straw Hats decide to part ways with their old ship, lighting it on fire in an extremely emotional scene that had even Oda tearing up. So there the Straw Hats are, fresh new bounties on their head and a brand new ship to set sail in, with endless possibilities ahead. This seems like a good setup for a fan favorite arc, right?
Wrong.
Everywhere I see online, Thriller Bark is consistently ranked as being one of the worst arcs throughout the series. People calling it boring, the villain is boring, the fight scenes are boring, the ending is boring, Brook is, well, people aren't going that far. Regardless, this is universally considered a slow point in the series by the One Piece community and is regarded as a dud between two huge and immense sagas being Water 7 and Summit War. But I have a confession to make. Even now, after catching up to One Piece in its entirety, Thriller Bark is still my favorite arc. Here's why. Let's start with the atmosphere surrounding Thriller Bark. After leaving the sunny and bright Water 7, the Straw Hats find themselves in a new, darker, spookier environment filled with ghosts and ghouls. No other pirate crews to talk to, and no sun to be warmed by, the Straw Hats get their first glimpse of desolation throughout the series. As a fan of gothic scenery and ghoulish creatures like zombies and vampires, I instantly grew attached to the Halloween-esque aesthetic Thriller Bark set up for itself. The dust-covered skies, the looming eeriness, the uncertainty of what could be lying ahead, Gecko Moria's big juicy ass, everything Oda was trying to accomplish with this scenery just worked. And speaking of Gecko Moria, I think he's way too overhated. Sure, he's kind of a lazy ass and kind of just sits around for a good portion of his appearance, but come on now, look at his final form. You cannot tell me that shit ain't sick. He's literally building an army up from the undead to take out his arch rival Kaido. This is literally half of you watching's ultimate power fantasy. Gecko Moria also isn't the only villain in Thriller Bark. We also have Dr. Hogback, Absalon, and Perona, each of which are interesting in their own right. Dr. Hogback is a once world-renowned doctor turned evil scientist who helps create undead zombie soldiers for Gecko Moria. He's basically a mix of Edward from Twilight and Gru from Despicable Me. Then there's Absalon, who spends the majority of Thriller Bark doing exactly what you degenerates would be doing in the One Piece universe, trying to get Nami to marry him. Needless to say, Sanji was not a big fan of this guy. Then lastly, there's Perona, probably the best of the three side villains in my opinion, with her ability to freely disperse ghosts that make the Straw Hats lose every shred of confidence and dignity upon contact. Oh yeah, except for Usopp, because his confidence is already so low the ghosts don't make any difference. Speaking of Usopp, he really shines in Thriller Bark and finally gets a chance to rise above the usually stronger other Straw Hats and really proves himself to be a capable member of the crew. As someone who loved Usopp since the very beginning of the series, seeing him finally come into his own and seem actually important in a fight for once was pretty awesome. Always rooting for you, Usopp. Thriller Bark is also the first part in the series where we meet Brook, a spooky but charming skeleton who never misses an opportunity to remind you he's already dead. And Brook definitely has the most drip out of any of the Straw Hats by far. I mean, come on now, you can't tell me this fit ain't stupid. Brook is a fan favorite Straw Hat, and it's easy to see why. His humorous yet endearing attitude toward the Straw Hats and life in general always brings a smile to my face. As well as his running gag of joking about already being dead despite the many, many times he uses them. Oh yeah, and he gave us this banger. So yeah, Brook is pretty cool. A big plot point in Thriller Bark is when Brook and some of the other Straw Hats get their shadow stolen by Gecko Moria. Gecko Moria, being the evil zombie ringleader that he is, traps their shadows into various types of ghouls and goblins that they must defeat in order to regain their shadows and see the light of day again. There's some pretty cool fight scenes between the Straw Hats and their zombie counterparts, but the one that takes the cake by far is the fight scene between Oars and Luffy. Oars was an ancient giant born 500 years prior to the Straw Hats landing in Thriller Bark, and due to his unwavering power and size, Gecko Moria was saving Oars as a special zombie waiting for the right person's shadow to entrap into Oars. And with Luffy now having a whopping 300 million berry bounty on his head, Gecko Moria uses his shadow as the perfect candidate to trap into Oars. Now imagine Luffy with all his strength, goofiness, and of course hunger, but as a 67 meter tall undead demon that cannot feel pain. Yeah, this was just a recipe for mayhem. Seeing Luffy up to his regular shenanigans, but now in a demon giant's body, was pretty entertaining to watch. Somehow, Luffy's hunger in Oars is increased, which is incredible considering Luffy in his normal body is already a pretty much bottomless pit for anything meat. Oars' appearance ends with the fight scene between him and Luffy, but not just regular Luffy, a jacked demon Luffy. Before the fight with Oars, Luffy is force-fed 100 shadows by some victims of Gecko Moria in his shadow theft. Luffy's given these shadows in order to gain immense strength to once and for all take out Gecko Moria and restore all the shadows to the people of Thriller Bark. Now, amped up on 100 shadows and pure testosterone, Luffy makes his way to kick Oars' ass into submission and return his own and everyone else's shadow back to them. The fight scene between Luffy and Oars is fierce, but also pretty comical. I love the scene where Luffy slams Oars back and forth by his hair like he's some sort of ragdoll. It's good stuff for sure, but nothing compares to the final fight scene and the ending of Thriller Bark. After defeating Oars and Gecko Moria, everyone in Thriller Bark bursts into celebration, for now they have their shadows regained and can step foot into the sunlight once again. The people of Thriller Bark are giddy with excitement, and everyone is cheering for Luffy and the Straw Hat Pirates, until a strange man appears who's completely silent, but once he's there, his presence is heard by everyone. This unknown man, creature, thing is Bartholomew Kuma, and I don't want to get into power scalings and pique your autism special interest so you can tell me how wrong I am in the comments, but from what I remember, Kuma at least felt like the strongest antagonist we've seen in the series up until that point. I mean, come on now, this man-creature thing can teleport at will while simultaneously shoot the whooping people out his face, all while having his right hand on the Bible. Praise the Lord. Kuma is sent by the world government to revive Gecko Moria and execute anyone who may have bared witness to Gecko Moria's defeat, which obviously includes the Straw Hats. After hearing why Kuma is there, Zoro is the first one to engage with him, but his attacks are futile. Kuma either dodges or deflects all of Zoro's attacks with his Devil Fruit ability called the Paw Paw Fruit. The Paw Paw Fruit allows Kuma to compress air into a paw-shaped balloon, making a small but extremely powerful bomb. After stunning Zoro with this, Kuma says he will let everyone live and go about their normal lives if they would all surrender Luffy to the world government. Of course the Straw Hats won't give up their captain like that, and now after freeing their shadows from Gecko Moria, neither will the people at Thriller Bark. So they all collectively flip Kuma the bird and tell him to take his big ass on a hike. He could really use the cardio. Kuma is unfazed though. Growing up, he was always the tubby kid, and he grew thick-skinned to these type of comments. He simply slurs, "What a pity," before going full Hiroshima on them and destroying most of Thriller Bark in mere seconds. The bombs explodes and instantly KOs all of the Straw Hats. All of them except Zoro. Being the only one still conscious, Zoro then launches at Bartholomew Kuma, attempting to take out Kuma for good and avenge Thriller Bark, but his attacks still rain futile and Zoro is defeated pretty quickly. Knowing he will not be spared and he's dead either way, Zoro pleads to Kuma to spare Luffy and take his life as compensation. Amidst Zoro and his pleading with Kuma, out of nowhere Sanji launches himself into the situation and screams for Kuma to take his life now instead of Zoro's. Seems like all the Straw Hats just have a death wish now. But seriously, this scene was extremely heartfelt and emotional. Sanji and Zoro are the two on the crew that are always fighting with one another. They can never agree on anything and are constantly tossing insults at each other, acting as if they can't stand the other. But this scene proves no matter how much they try to front, the right wing and the left wing for the Straw Hat crew care deeply about one another, care so much to give their own life for them. This was really great to see because while we all know deep down Sanji and Zoro were pals to the end, this scene just confirms it for us. Zoro not letting Sanji win at anything, even death, knocks Sanji out again and asks to be taken as sacrifice, which Kuma accepts. So with his devil fruit powers, all damage done to Luffy and Thriller Bark is transferred over to Zoro, and it's a lot of damage done. What a trooper, talk about a ride or die for your crew. The Straw Hats all regain consciousness, and of course Luffy feels as good as ever, but Zoro is nowhere to be found, until Sanji finds Zoro standing alone outside the ruins. He is alive, but his blood is splattered everywhere, and it's clear he took a huge sum of damage. And just to throw salt in his wounds, Zoro must keep composure and not mention to his crewmates what a great sacrifice he's made for them. What a trooper, talk about a ride or die for your crew. Zoro has always been Mr. Honor and Stoicism, but having to contain this traumatic experience all to himself without talking to even the people you made the sacrifice for about it, Jesus, that takes a lot of heart. The ending of Thriller Bark packs a hard punch, with Zoro taking the spotlight and showing us just how deeply committed he is for the Straw Hat Pirates and how dedicated his character is. Last, I want to address the main critique I see thrown at Thriller Bark by people online, that nothing happens. And I kind of get where people are coming from with this criticism. Sure, it might not be as impactful in the grand scheme of the One Piece universe as Water 7's defeat of CP9 or Summit War's gargantuan size all-out fight to the death showdown, but Thriller Bark doesn't have to be that. Just because the stakes aren't set to 100 the whole time doesn't mean it's not enjoyable. That's actually what makes it enjoyable. I don't know about you, but I like One Piece because even in a tough conflict and tense battles, it never took itself too seriously. One Piece always finds a way to feel lighthearted and fun, even in the darkest of situations. One Piece is at its best when everything seems fun, and no other arc does this better than Thriller Bark. So no, Thriller Bark isn't the most important in the world of One Piece, but nor is it trying to be, and that's what makes Thriller Bark the best arc in One Piece. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. This took a little while to make, so please leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment, and give me oral sex. We're gonna be probably making some more videos soon, so yeah, keep that posted, and yeah, have a good one.